Let's move to the defensive side of the ball, Connor, because I feel like if South Carolina does have that season I was talking about, 5-5 or better, they're going to have the best defense they've ever had under Will Muschamp at South Carolina. I mean, you have to like what they have. I mean, listen, you lose Javon Kinlaw, you lose DJ Wanham, you lose TJ Brunson, who I think was a very underrated player there in the middle, a true leader on that defense. But, you have to like Zach Pickens. You think about Jordan Birch filling in where Wanham was. You have one of the best duos at defensive back in J.C. Horn and Israel McQuamu. And I've said this all offseason. It's not necessarily a slight, but just – listen, I know the defense was put in bad positions last year because you were just so bad offensively, and it's crazy. I'm a big preseason magazine guy, Connor, and I got the Athlon magazine, and one of the stats, they have their favorite numbers. One of the stats that jumped out at me is South Carolina was first in the SEC as far as tempo goes. They had 20 seconds between plays, and that was first in the SEC. Well, you obviously know the problem with that is when you're not scoring a bunch of points or getting a bunch of first downs, your defense is gassed. I mean, your defense is going to be gassed 24/7. So, listen, I know the defensive numbers last year suffered because of that, but South Carolina, I don't think they finished higher than maybe 50th nationally in defense. And to me, I could almost say, listen, when you hired Will Muschamp, you knew offense would be a struggle. You knew that was going to be something you were going to have to work out. But defensively, I mean, going into year 5, you should be expecting this defense, in my opinion, to be a top 3, 4 in the league. A top 25 defense nationally. I mean, maybe I'm overshooting. Maybe I'm a homer, but I'll just ask you the overall outlook of the defense. And to me, will it be an indictment on Will Muschamp as a coach if he can't get this defense to perform at an elite level in year 5?
So I think that it should be in contention for the best defense at South Carolina. That 2017 group, I believe, finished 25th nationally.
Great with takeaways. Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what they did extremely well. And you saw, I mean, when they took over in the Outback Bowl, they were a force on the stretch. I think being one of the top 3 or 4 units in the SEC is so challenging. And I think that, like, you look around and you're like, okay, well, you've got Georgia, you've got Alabama, even like Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's defense should be really, really good with all that production back after they had a top 15 unit last year. But, I mean, I think we're at the point now where the pieces should be in place. And I say that despite the fact that you lose to Javon Kinlaw, who was South Carolina's best defensive player since Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, at least in that conversation. But I like the fact that you've got 2 guys who feel really, really good at the cornerback positions. And I think J.C. Horn, despite the fact he doesn't have the interception numbers, I think from a coverage standpoint, he's tremendous. And I think he's a guy that you can put on a number 1 and you can just say, go take care of that. Because South Carolina is going to see some really, really good receivers this year, even though they don't have to see Jamar Chase anymore with him opting out. But I think that that's a really good place to start. Where I'm fascinated by is in the front seven. Because I want to see Zach Pickens and Jordan Birch and how those guys really, really develop. Because Pickens on the inside last year, you don't really expect true freshmen to line up in the SEC on either side of the ball, offensive line or defensive line, and just take over. And he wasn't necessarily that guy. But if he makes that big year 2 jump and he becomes, a potential all-SEC guy, that changes things for them. Now, Jordan Birch, I would set the expectations relatively low just because of how weird this offseason's been. Somebody who arrived late, maybe the fact that there was a pandemic kind of changed, maybe not as many guys getting ahead of him on that learning curve because he wasn't going to be an early enrollee anyways. But I think that he's going to be used a little bit more in that spot, where, we're talking about a buck linebacker, somebody who is not necessarily an every down type player just yet, but a physical freak and somebody that Will Muschamp knows, like, I need to get this kid out there. I want to make sure that people are seeing him and people are seeing a glimpse into the future. If Pickens and Birch look like the real deal this year, that's what's going to change this group. And that's what's really going to allow them to take that next step and to be one of the best units in the SEC. Getting there will, as you said, depending on the offense. I mean, running a Brian McClendon offense last year that was so predicated on that tempo. And, I remember what Tom Luganville said a couple years ago where he's like, it's going to be Oregon 2.0. And it's like, no, not exactly. But, I think that it's just it is going to change the feel with Mike Bobo running that offense. Maybe they will get a little bit more of a breath, and that defense is going to have a better chance to succeed. But I think that having one of the best units of the Will Muschamp era or a unit that competes with that 2017 group in terms of production is very realistic.